Can Arsenal actually retain the league title? It's funny how football can quickly change your mood. A few months ago, Arsenal fans were celebrating something that had felt almost impossible for more than 2 decades. After 3 consecutive seasons of finishing second, after all the heartbreaks, after all the close calls, after all the conversations about whether Mikel Arteta could actually take this team over the line, Arsenal finally did it. We won the Premier League, not because somebody handed it over to us, not because Manchester City suddenly disappeared. Arsenal actually went on and won the league. We finished the 2025-2026 season as champions with 85 solid points, 7 points clear of Manchester City, finally ending that 22-year wait for a Premier League title. And for a club that had spent years being told that the process was almost there, that the squad was almost ready, that the next season could finally be the season, there was supposed to be one obvious next step. Build on it. Make the squad better. Make the team even stronger. Take the team that finally won the league and add even more quality to it, because that is what champions do, right? They don't usually look at the championship winning squad and say, you know what, we're good enough, let's just run it back. They look at the weakness, they identify the areas where they almost failed, and they identify the moments where the teams struggled, and then they fix it. So here we are. A new season is about to begin. Arsenal are defending champions. Mikel Arteta has finally won the Premier League. The pressure should be different now. The expectation should be higher. And yet, if you have watched Arsenal throughout this preseason, you might have found yourself asking a very uncomfortable question. Whether what exactly has changed? Because yes, Arsenal have signed Bruno Guimarães, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Bruno Guimarães is some average midfielder that Arsenal picked up because they needed another body. No, this is Bruno Guimarães, a Premier League proven midfielder, a player who has been one of the most influential midfielders in the league for years, a player who can defend, progress with the ball, press, carry, pass, create and even score. Arsenal reportedly paid around £75 million to bring him from Newcastle, and the club clearly sees him as a major piece of the next phase of this team. So this is a serious signing. But then you look at the rest of the window and you start asking yourself, where is the explosion? Where is that signing that makes everybody around the Premier League go, ho ho, Arsenal are serious this year? Where is that player that changes the entire conversation? Because Arsenal tried. We absolutely tried. The Vinicius Junior story told us that. For a brief period, Arsenal were exploring whether they could bring one of the best names in world football to the Emirates. And honestly, I loved the ambition. I loved the idea that we were even willing to enter that conversation, because that is the kind of mentality you want from a club that has just won the league. You don't want to be scared of the biggest players. You want to be involved in those conversations. But wanting Vinicius Junior and actually getting Vinicius Junior are two different things. And once that possibility started to fade, the question becomes very simple. What's the alternative? Because if you're Arsenal and you have just won the Premier League and you know that your attack still has limitations, you can't just say, well, Vinicius Junior didn't happen, so let's just wait and see. You need another answer. And that is where I think the biggest debate around Arsenal comes right now. Because there's a difference between having a good squad and having a squad capable of defending the Premier League title. Those two things are not automatically the same. That is what makes this season so interesting, because I genuinely believe Arsenal can win the league again. I also genuinely believe there are enough warning signs right now to make you question whether we will. And those two things can be true at the same time. Now, before anybody starts shouting at me in the comments, no, I'm not about to tell you that Arsenal are going to finish fourth because we drew against Como, right? It's preseason, and preseason is just preseason. We all know this, right? Every summer, a team loses a friendly and suddenly somebody starts making a documentary about the manager's job being under threat. Then the same team wins the opening 3 Premier League games and everybody pretends the preseason never happened. So no, I'm not going to use preseason results as some kind of crystal ball, but I do think you can take cues from preseason, and that's the difference. You can't use preseason to predict the league, but you can actually use preseason to identify things that might become problems once the real football starts. And Arsenal have given us a few things to think about. The final preseason game against Como ended 1-1 before Arsenal won the game 4-3 on penalties. Miles Lewis-Kelly scored for Arsenal, Como equalized, and Bruno Guimarães made his first appearance for the club. And yes, Arsenal won, technically, right? But if you watched the game quite closely, especially the attacking phase, you could understand why some supporters came away feeling like something was still missing, right? The same thing had already been visible in other preseason games. There were moments, right? There were individual flashes. There were some encouraging performances, but that feeling of inevitability that you expect from a champion didn't consistently exist. And that's the part that interests me, because Arsenal don't necessarily look bad, they look incomplete. And incomplete is a very different problem. A bad team needs rebuilding. An incomplete team might just need 2 or 3 really good decisions. And Arsenal are sitting in that uncomfortable middle ground where the foundation is actually excellent, the squad is talented, the manager is proven, the system is established, and yet there are still obvious areas where you look at the team and think, yeah, they could actually really use somebody here. And the biggest one for me is the attack, because let's talk about the left side. Arsenal have Christos Zolis, right? And I actually like Zolis. I think there's a lot to work with here. He arrived from Club Brugge for a reported £34 million after an excellent spell in Belgium, and it was brought in specifically as a replacement for Leandro Trossard. So this isn't me saying Arsenal have nobody. We do. The question is whether Zolis is enough, and that is a completely different conversation, because if you are Arsenal and you want to retain the Premier League title, you don't just need players who can contribute. You need players who can actually change games. You need somebody who can receive the ball on the left wing and make opposition fullback genuinely panic. Somebody who can take a game that is stuck at 0-0 and suddenly create something from absolutely nothing. Somebody who can get the ball and say, I'm going to beat my man. Not, I'm going to recycle possession. Not, I'm going to pass it back to the left back. Not, I'm going to wait for the overlap. I'm talking about somebody who can just break the structure, because that is what Arsenal have sometimes lacked. And this is where the Vinicius Junior situation becomes so interesting, because Vini represents exactly that type of player. He doesn't need the game to be perfect. He doesn't need 10 teammates around him creating the perfect condition. Give him the ball. Let him attack. Let him run. Let him create chaos. That is the kind of attacking profile Arsenal are looking at. And once you remove that kind of player from the equation, you have to ask yourself whether the alternatives give you enough of the same qualities. Because Arsenal already have a very structured team. We have players who understand their positions. We have players who know where to be. We have incredibly sophisticated possession structure. We have set piece quality. We have defensive organization. Then we have Bukayo Saka. We have Martin Odegaard. We have Declan Rice. We have a striker in Victor Gyökeres who can give them another dimension. So maybe the missing ingredient isn't another system player. Maybe it is somebody who can actually break the system. Because I don't think Arsenal need another player simply to make the squad bigger. We need another player to make the team more dangerous. Now, there's another layer to this, Gabriel Martinelli. Because for years, Martinelli felt like one of those players Arsenal fans would never have to discuss selling. It was the young Brazilian winger who exploded into the first team, right? And he had the speed, he had the directness, he had the goals, and he had the energy. We can all see it. It looked like somebody who could become one of the very best wide players in Europe. But football moves quickly. And now we're at the point where Arsenal reportedly considering an offer of around £38 million from Galatasaray for Martinelli. And honestly, that tells you something. It doesn't necessarily mean Martinelli is finished. It doesn't mean he suddenly became a bad player. It means that the club may be asking a different question. Does Martinelli still fit the next version of Arsenal? Because those are not the same questions, and this is where I think Arsenal fans have to be careful. We can love a player and still admit that the team may need something different, right? Martinelli is still capable of doing things that very few Arsenal players can do. That explosive running, the ability to attack space, that willingness to run beyond the defensive line. But if Arteta wants a winger who can consistently create against low blocks, combine tight spaces, make better decisions in the final third, and produce more reliable end product, then maybe Arsenal are looking for a different profile. And if Martinelli leaves, suddenly the left wing doesn't just become an area where Arsenal could improve. It becomes an area where Arsenal absolutely have to improve, because you cannot sell one of your attacking options and then decide that the squad is somehow deeper. That doesn't make sense. And this is why the next few hours of the transfer window is incredibly important, because Arsenal are not far away. And this is the scary part. We are not rebuilding. We are defending a title. We already have a champion's mentality. We already know how to win the league. We already have a manager who understands what it takes. We already have the players who have gone through the process and through the pressure, but the Premier League does not care that you won it last year. Manchester City are not going to give Arsenal a parade. Liverpool are not going to give Arsenal a guard of honor every weekend. Manchester United are spending money. Chelsea are spending ridiculous amount of money, and Manchester City have already made a statement of their own. The margin are going to be very tiny. And that brings me back to Bruno Guimarães, because this is where Arsenal transfer window gets complicated. On one hand, Bruno is an excellent signing. On the other hand, was midfield actually Arsenal's biggest problem? That's the question. Because look at Arsenal's midfield. Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard, Martin Zubimendi, Mikel Merino, now Bruno Guimarães. That right there is an absurd amount of quality. And I understand why Arsenal wanted him. Absolutely, I do understand. You can never have too many elite midfielders when you are competing in the Premier League, Champions League, domestic cups, and potentially playing more than 50 games. But if I had a choice between adding another world-class midfielder and adding a world-class winger to this Arsenal team, I'm taking the winger every single time. And that is no disrespect to Bruno. That is absolutely no disrespect to him. It is about squad balance, because Bruno may actually solve a problem that we actually don't know we have at the moment. It gives Arteta another midfield option who can do multiple jobs. It can play deeper. It can press. It can win the ball. It can progress possession. It can make aggressive passes. It can support attack. And importantly, it gives Arsenal another player who can survive physical demand of the Premier League. But there is also another danger. And that danger is that you start collecting midfielders because midfielders are safe. You know what you are getting. You know they are safe. You know how they help you control games. But at some point, somebody has to win you the game. And sometimes that player isn't one who completes 90% of his passes. Sometimes it is the guy who receives the ball in the 78th minute, takes two defenders with him, creates a chance, and changes the entire match. That type of player Arsenal still needs, and maybe that player is already in the squad. Maybe it's Saka, maybe it's Zolis, maybe it's Odegaard, maybe it's Eze, maybe it's one of the young players. I don't know. But if Arsenal wants to retain the league and go deeper in Europe, I think we need one more attacker who can consistently give them that unpredictability, because the best Arsenal team of Arteta's era have always had moments where the structure breaks and individual quality takes over. And that's the difference between controlling the football match and actually killing it. You can dominate a game for 70 minutes and have 65% possession, and you can have 8 corners, and you can have 15 shots and still draw 0-0. Then somebody produces one moment. That's football. And Arsenal have to become better at producing those moments. Now, let's talk about our defense. We need to talk about William Saliba, because if you're building an Arsenal team to defend the Premier League title, you want Saliba playing. There is no debate about this. He's one of the most important players in the squad. But Arsenal are currently dealing with a long-term problem with William Saliba, who has been sidelined with a back issue. Reports have suggested that an absence of several months, with estimates of around 4 to 5 months, has been discussed. And that's a massive problem, because Arsenal's defensive structure has been built around the ability to defend high. When you play the way Arsenal play, your centre back are not just defenders, they are insurance. Your full backs push forward. Your midfielders position themselves aggressively. You compress the pitch. You commit numbers. And the centre back have to deal with the space behind them. Saliba is perfect for that. He is fast, he is calm, he is physically strong, he can defend large spaces, he can recover when Arsenal lose the ball. Take him out of that equation and suddenly every decision becomes even more dangerous. And that is why the defensive situation cannot be simply ignored. Arsenal have been exploring defensive options because Saliba and Jurriën Timber have both been dealing with injury issues, and the club's pursuit of defensive covers has reportedly included Eric Konsa. But again, this comes back to the same question: does Arsenal have enough? Because there's a difference between having enough defenders to fill the bench and having enough defenders to actually maintain the level required to win the Premier League again. If Saliba is out for months, Arsenal can't just say, oh, Gabriel will play every game, because eventually something happens. Either suspension, fatigue, injury, loss of form, Champions League, cup matches, international breaks. And for all these, you actually need depth. And not just depth, you need quality depth, because the Premier League is actually brutal. One injury doesn't necessarily cost you the title, but one injury plus another injury plus a suspension plus difficult Champions League schedule plus a few bad decisions in transfer markets, that's how a 7-point advantage disappears. And this is why I don't think the question should be, can Arsenal win the league? Of course they can. The better question is, have we built enough protection around the team that won the league? And I'm not completely convinced yet. Now, there is another thing that I think Arsenal fans need to remember. Last season wasn't just Arsenal being good. It was also about Arsenal being consistent. We found a way to win games. We survived difficult moments. We put ourselves in position to take advantage when City dropped points. And eventually, we finished the job. But retaining the title is different. Now, every opponent has a target on you. Every away game becomes an opportunity for the opposition. Every team is going to want to be the team that beats the champion. Every manager is going to spend extra time preparing for Arsenal. You are no longer the team chasing the title, you are the team being chased, right? And psychologically, that is different. Look at what happened to teams in the past. Winning the Premier League is one challenge, doing it again is another, because once you've climbed that mountain, everybody else knows exactly where you are, and Arsenal now have to deal with that. But there is one thing that gives me confidence: Mikel Arteta. Because if there's one thing I don't doubt about Arsenal, it is the structure. Arteta has spent years building this. This is not just a team that suddenly appeared. This is a team that has developed over multiple seasons. The football is understood. The players understand the automatism. They know how to press. They know how to build. They know where the spaces are. They know what Arteta wants. And that matters enormously, because Arsenal aren't trying to invent themselves again. We're trying to improve an already successful model. That is much easier. If you're Manchester United, for example, you're trying to rebuild an identity, you have a completely different problem. Arsenal don't have that problem. We know who we are. The question is whether who they are is good enough to remain at the top. And I think the answer depends heavily on one thing: goals, scoring goals. Because Arsenal's defensive structure is good enough. Our midfield is probably good enough. Our goalkeeper situation is good enough. Our set pieces are good enough. Our manager is extremely good. Our mentality is top notch. But can we consistently score goals when the games get difficult? That is where I keep coming back to. Because if Arsenal have to win 1-0 every weekend, eventually you are going to lose one. If Arsenal can regularly turn 1-0 games to 2-0s and 3-0s, suddenly the entire season looks different. And that is why Gyökeres is so important, because Arsenal didn't sign Gyökeres just to have another striker. We signed him because we needed a different attacking option. That we needed someone who could attack space, someone who could run behind, someone who could give us some physicality, someone who can finish, someone who can make defenders uncomfortable. And I think Gyökeres signing could become one of the biggest reasons Arsenal retain the league. Or maybe not. But here's the problem. Listen to me. A striker can only score if somebody gives him the ball. You can put the best striker in Europe in the box. If the ball never arrives, it becomes a spectator. And that is why that winger issue that I discussed earlier matters so much. Because Arsenal needs to create more situations where Gyökeres receives the ball in dangerous positions. We need runners, we need creators, we need players who can attack one-on-one, players who can cross the ball, players who can actually cut inside, players who can make defenders turn. We need somebody who can do it when the game isn't going according to plan. Now, one of the things I actually liked about Arsenal's preseason was the emergence of some young players, because this is another part of the story that gets lost when we talk about transfers. Not every solution has to come from the transfer market. No, Max Dalman is one of those players. Ethan Nwaneri is one of those players. Miles Kelly, who scored against Como, continues to develop, and there are young players who could potentially give Arteta something that a new signing cannot: fearlessness. Because sometimes young players don't know they are supposed to be scared. They get the ball, they run, they try new things, and they don't care about the defenders who play 300 Premier League games. And if you can get one of those players to break into the first team, suddenly you have another weapon. The problem is you can't build a title defense around potentials. That is important distinction. They can even become stars, but Arsenal can't enter this season thinking hopefully Max Dalman becomes the answer to our left wing problem. That's unfair to the player, and it is dangerous squad planning. If it becomes the answer, brilliant, but Arsenal should have a plan that works even if it doesn't, and that is what I want to see from the club. A plan. Because right now there are too many things that feels dependent on what happens next. What happens with Martinelli? What happens with the left wing? What happens with Saliba? What happens with defensive depth? Those are the questions, and the answer to those questions could decide whether Arsenal retain the league or not. Because remember, Arsenal are not trying to become champions anymore. We already are champions. We are trying to prove that last season wasn't the peak. We are trying to turn a championship into a period dominance, and that requires a different mentality. It requires the club to be ruthless. If you identify a weakness, you fix it. If a player isn't good enough, you improve the position. If your best centre back is injured, bring in cover. If your attack lacks creativity, find creativity. Don't wait till January. Don't wait until you are 5 points behind Manchester City, because by then it might be too late. And this is why I think the Arsenal transfer window has been both good and frustrating at the same time. Good because Bruno Guimarães is an elite player. Good because Zolis gives the squad another attacking option. It's good because Arsenal have continued to invest. It's good because the club clearly has an ambition. But frustrating because you can see the opportunity. You can see how close this team is. And sometimes when you're that close, the difference between winning 1 title and winning 3 isn't 10 new players. It's just one ridiculous winger, one amazing defender, one midfielder, one player that gives you another level. And Arsenal have spent years getting themselves into this position. We cannot afford to waste it. Now, before we go too negative, let's be fair. This is an Arsenal team that won the Premier League. They didn't fluke it. They weren't carried by one player. They didn't sneak into first place on the final day. They were the best team in England over the course of the season last season. We finished 7 points ahead of Manchester City. Let that sink in. That matters, because of that, Arsenal should enter the new season as one of the favorites. Probably one of the biggest favorites. The foundation is there, the quality is there, the manager is there, the experience all together is there, and the confidence of finally winning the title is there. So if Arsenal doesn't make another signing, I'm not suddenly predicting a disaster. I'm not saying they're going to finish 5th. I'm not saying Manchester City are automatically going to win the title. I'm not even saying Arsenal have had a bad transfer window. I think that would be lazy. What I'm saying is that Arsenal have had an opportunity to make a very good team significantly better, and I don't think they should have stopped out halfway. Because when you look at Manchester City, you see a team that is also trying to improve. When you look at Chelsea, you look at Liverpool, they're also trying to compete. There are always going to be surprises. That's the Premier League. That is the Premier League for you. So you don't get to defend your title against the same version of the league you conquered. Everybody evolves, and Arsenal have to also evolve even faster. And that is why I don't care that Arsenal drew against Como. I don't care that we needed penalties. I don't care that the preseason hasn't looked perfect, because Preseason doesn't give you points. The real test begins when the referee blows the whistle and suddenly 3 points are on the line. But I do care about what the preseason reveals, and what Arsenal have revealed is that this team is still searching for the final of pieces. Bruno Guimarães is one piece. Zolis might be another piece. The return of injured players will be another good piece. The development of young players could be another one. But there is still something missing, and maybe Arteta knows exactly what it is. Maybe Arsenal have another signing coming. Maybe the club is waiting for the right opportunity, because football is unpredictable. That is what makes this so difficult. If you ask me today, can Arsenal retain the Premier League title? Yes, I would say. Absolutely, we can. We definitely can retain the Premier League title. But if you ask me whether I am completely convinced that we will, I'm not there yet. And that is where I think the conversation gets interesting, because Arsenal have finally reached that point where being close is no longer enough. We are now champions. The question isn't whether the project works. It does. We have all seen it. The question is how ambitious Arsenal wants to be with it. Do we want to win Premier League title, or do we want to build a team capable of dominating English football for the next 5-10 years? Because those are different ambitions. If it is the first one, maybe this squad has already done enough. If it is the second one, I think Arsenal still needs to be ruthless in this transfer window, because the hardest thing Arsenal could possibly do now is not to win the Premier League. We've already done that. The hardest thing is waking up every morning as champions and still finding the reason to get better. And that is the challenge Mikel Arteta has now. So can Arsenal actually retain the league title? Maybe. Maybe they even can be better. Maybe Bruno Guimarães is the signing that takes them to another level. Maybe Zolis becomes the winger nobody saw coming. Maybe Martinelli stays and rediscovers the player we all know he used to be. Maybe Gyökeres scores 25 goals. Maybe Saka takes another step. Maybe Odegaard is healthy. Maybe Saliba comes back and defense becomes even impossible to break. Maybe the kids explode. Maybe Arsenal don't need another superstar at all. Or maybe they do, and maybe the next few hours of this transfer window will tell us everything. Because right now, Arsenal have built a team capable of winning the league. The question is whether they have built a team capable of keeping it. And I think the answer is still waiting to be written. So if you're an Arsenal fan, tell me honestly, are you confident that this squad is going to go back to back? Or do you think Arsenal still need that one big attacking signing before we can seriously talk about retaining the Premier League? Because personally, I'm still waiting to see what Arsenal will do next. And that might be the most important transfer of the summer.